welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley Aireonna, joined by the wonderful Tom Jensen. Hi Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Ashley. You feeling better now?
Feeling a lot better.
Good.
For people who don't know, I never get sick, and I had the worst sickness ever that lasted way too long and really wiped me on my ass. I usually can mentally like I've gotten sick in the way that I've woken up and not felt good, but then I can still go to work, still go to school, still work out mentally. This I was like dead. It was crazy. I know. Oh, look, it's my best friend. Oh, Lacey. She says she never does get sick. It's true. She knows. Everyone, this is my best friend Lacey. It was just her birthday, so wish her a happy birthday. Also, my
Happy
dad is
birthday.
listening, and it was just his birthday because the thing about November and Thanksgiving for me is that I never need a reminder to be thankful because literally it's my childhood best friend Angela. I call her B, and it's her birthday. Then it's my dad's birthday, and then it's Lacey's birthday, like all in consecutive order. So
Okay.
all around Thanksgiving too. So
Okay. So happy birthday to everybody.
yeah, I always feel very, very grateful for all that. And because I was sick, I didn't get to see as many people. I almost hung out with my friend Angela, but she experienced the same sickness that I was experiencing. And she was like, stay away from me until you feel better. But my dad, who interacts with you guys in the chat a lot, um, I'll be hanging out and celebrating with him coming up. So I think Tom might be frozen. Something that was happening before the show, and the reason that we're about 30 minutes late is that Tom was freezing and unfreezing. So we might play around with Tom all stream um, and be going like this. But
Yeah. Sorry, folks.
it's no big deal. We'll roll with the punches as much as possible. If it does keep freezing up on us too, we can always do it. Like we can rehab our show this week. But I feel good. I don't feel like that'll be necessary. Hopefully, unless Tom is literally frozen right now. Oh, I feel bad. He restarted his computer. I don't know. We were originally going to go live at 3, but we saw that Grant and Larry were streaming, so we
Hopefully
went.
not. But if it happens again,
Super sticker, it's working. You don't know about that, Tom, but you don't know about this. But Steve-O sent me a super sticker, which is great because I was telling people that because I normally read through all the comments in my instant reaction, but I had so many thoughts that I talked for like an hour and 15 minutes. And then I was trying to go back through. So I was like, if they were important, send me a super chat. And then people let me know that they actually couldn't even send me super chats. So I'm glad to know it's working today. But something that's not working is Tom. Hold on. Rolling, rolling, rolling. How you doing, Tom? I'm sorry.
I'm frozen, unfrozen.
Frozen, unfrozen. We'll keep
I'm
rolling with it. If it
unfrozen
doesn't,
caveman lawyer.
yeah. Let's get into this quickly. By the way, I told everyone to say happy birthday to my dad, and he's just on Kyle Shanahan's ass, unlike Larry Krueger, apparently, according to Mr. Corey, who says Larry Krueger is just lost in Shanahan's fan club. And then we move on to my dad. I feel bad. Poor Tom. Hold on. Let's see.
This is bad.
Tom, look at how happy you look in this frozen shot though. I like that.
Hey.
Oh,
I'm so sorry, everybody. My internet connection is basically broken.
okay, so really
Let's go.
quickly, I'm seeing that super stickers are working, and I'm curious if you guys are sending super stickers because it's cute and you can, or are the super chats not working? The only reason I'm asking about this is I thought that super chats were on my channel this entire time, and then yesterday someone was telling me that they couldn't send in super chats, which I think is why people are sending them. But I really appreciate them, emojis or super chats. I appreciate. So, anyways, I've been distracted, but we're going to get into the show now. Hopefully Tom is rolling with us. You look good to me, Tom. But I want to start with the injuries from the game and just all the injuries that the 49ers are dealing with, because obviously this is going to impact the Bills and the rest of the season. The Bills game that's coming up this Sunday, the rest of the season, it impacted them against the Packers. Now, we'll get into it later on, was what we blame the most. And I want to make it clear, even though I'm starting with injuries, I don't want the season takeaway to be that there was just a lot of bad injuries this year and they don't really need to make any changes. They just need to roll it back and hope to have better injury luck, because this 49ers team was being undisciplined and playing like an amateur football team way before the injuries strike.
Hit.
There we go. That's words. It's good that I'm a podcaster and talk. Okay, but Kyle Shanahan did talk yesterday. So he informed us that Purdy did some light throwing on Monday. He was going to take today, Tuesday off. It's a league national Players' Day off, usually, unless you have like a Thursday game. Sometimes people will play, but they were going to rest Purdy's arm today. And then on Monday, they're going to try to have him throwing and maybe even try to go through a full practice Wednesday and Thursday. He did light throwing, nothing extensive. Please remember, they considered what he did last week on Thursday light throwing, and he threw 4 passes and then had his shoulder massaged by a trainer and then had to go get a second MRI. So when they said he did light throwing, don't think it's, oh, he's, feeling totally fine and practicing. They literally just mean he like threw a football to test if his arm was hurting. Now, with that second MRI, they've now had 2 MRIs. They got the second one because the first one showed that there should be no issues, but obviously Purdy was dealing with immense pain. I think Purdy's a very tough guy. We've seen him try to play when his elbow was, completely torn to shreds. We've seen him play through rib injuries before. So I think if Purdy could push himself to play, he definitely would have been on the field. So you have to know the level of pain was intense. It didn't show up on the first MRI. So after last week, when he left practice on Thursday, they went and gave him a second MRI. Nothing is coming up on the MRIs. So that scares me, because I think back to the fact that Purdy was kind of participating in football before his elbow was all the way healed. If you remember the last year when they made it to the Super Bowl, during Super Bowl week, people were asking him about his shoulder, and he said his shoulder started to feel good around Thanksgiving, meaning he played not his shoulder, his elbow. He said his elbow started to feel like 100%, like not even thinking about it, around Thanksgiving, meaning he played the first 2 months through, some pain, obviously not, he was cleared to play football, but it scares me to have, Purdy's played 3 years now. 2 of the 3 years, he's been negatively affected by his throwing arm. That's an important part of football for a guy that you're, considering extending. But we'll talk more about Brock Purdy in a second. I just wanted to let you guys know he did participate in some slight throwing on Monday. John Feliciano, he had his IR window opened. What that means is you can practice for 3 weeks, 21 days, and then the team, depending on how you're responding to practice, can elevate you from IR. The problem is if they open up your practice window and you can't start or you can't be like elevated off of IR after those 21 days, then you're actually on IR for the rest of the season. That happened with John Feliciano. Yesterday, he put out a tweet basically saying, basically, John Feliciano put out a tweet saying if this was the end, that he was, so grateful for his time playing football. Father Time catches up to you, all that. Maybe somewhere else, or maybe on, the practice squad or something like that. He comes back next year, but he did, going into this year with the 49ers, insinuate this was going to be his last year before retirement anyways. Now that he's dealing with this injury, I think it might be the end for John Feliciano and his career, which with how this 49ers offensive line has been especially in recent weeks, especially last week, how they've graded out. It's a huge bummer that they don't have the ability to, have John Feliciano. Poor Tom. I don't know what to do about Tom really quickly. How you doing, Tom?
I'm still here. I'm not so sure about my internet connection, though.
No worries. Okay, so John Feliciano, he's going to be on IR for the
IR, right.
remainder of the year. But a encouraging situation from IR is Dre Greenlaw. Obviously, tore his Achilles during the Super Bowl. It's heartbreaking for fans and for probably Dre Greenlaw and players to think back to. I wonder what happens if Dre actually finishes out that Super Bowl game. But he tore his Achilles. He's been rehabbing. 2 weeks ago, Kyle said that he had been going through practices basically with trainers on his own. Today or yesterday, he was elevated off of, not off of IR, but his practice window from IR was opened. So now he has 21 days, the 3 weeks of practicing. He's going to practice all this week. I was a little surprised by this one, Tom, only because I don't think they're practicing on Thursday. And so I was shocked that they were going to give him like one of those weeks is going to be a partial week. But he'll be participating in practice on Wednesday, which is exciting for Dre Greenlaw. I hope it goes well for him.
Given that it was a partial week, that shows their optimism that he could play next week.
Yeah, I agree. And it adds in another day where obviously he can go to the facility, get rehab. So you'll have like one full day of practice, a rehab day, and then another on not Thursday, on Friday, he'll have another day of practice. So I'm excited for Dre Greenlaw. I think, like many people, I have a soft spot for Dre Greenlaw. I think he's like such the embodiment of what a football player is. And
All
for
heart.
this team, this defense, you feel like his energy and his physicality and like enthusiasm and anger and passion is like kind of missing. Like he really embodied that like swarm to the football, swarm to the ball carrier mentality that they had under Robert Saleh, under D'Amico Ryans, and even last year. So, and then especially everyone knowing he was playing through injury all last year to have his Achilles pop when it did, I think was so heartbreaking for so many. So I'm really hoping that he'll, be okay. Something that I do want to maybe ask you and say, I want him to come back for his own good. I'm not expecting that he's going to come back and this defense is going to play like a whole different defense than it has all year. I think that would be very naive. He is, only I think 9 months out from his initial injury, not even a full year from his injury. And a lot of players who have dealt with injuries like this say that it's not your first year back that you really feel like you're back to yourself. It's the year after that you can kind of play without even thinking about what's going on. So, do you think that Dre Greenlaw is just going to be the fix for the defense, and all of a sudden, the 20 missed tackles per game, 15 in one, first half is going to be done, or are you just more like it's exciting to have him back, but you're not anticipating
Well,
it
yeah,
changes?
I don't think Dre will be back to who he was until next season.
Okay.
And we've seen a preview of what Dre's adjustment period is going to be like through Christian McCaffrey. That here's someone that went through a similar injury, and McCaffrey still isn't back after playing a couple weeks
No.
and having a chance to wrap up in practice. So I don't think that Dre is going to be the player that we saw before he got hurt in the Super Bowl. But I do think that he'll be an upgrade over Devondre Campbell, and he'll be somebody that can help, just not in the way that he would normally help. So he'll be good on some plays. He'll help on the run, but I think that he'll basically be a guy that can help finish to gang tackle to stop a running back. That he's that extra oomph that they've been missing in terms of the violence of their game defensively. And I think he'll help them emotionally. I think he can give them a big lift to the defense of just being there. And we've got Dre back. We're whole now. I think that helps the mindset of a team.
I completely agree, especially when you think of, Renardo Green, some of the rookie players. I think just seeing how kind of lights out Dre Greenlaw goes and his like mentality of never giving up. We've seen this defense look, and I don't want to put this all, I think Fred Warner is a really good leader. I know earlier on in the season he had an injury, and I don't know if he's still struggling with that or maybe just his style is a little bit different from Dre Greenlaw's, but he's really struggled, especially with like missed tackles. I think having a guy that has Dre Greenlaw's mindset and physicality, even if he's not 100% on the field what he used to be, I think it can help other guys watching him kind of understand the energy that they need to bring, because he seems like a little bit more of that player. Do you guys think Tom is frozen again? He is. Darn it. Poor Tom. Okay, so moving off of Dre Greenlaw, Jacob Cowing. He's still in the concussion protocol. The thing with Jacob Cowing is I wish that he was involved more in the passing game as a wide receiver than as a, kick returner. I don't think that's really his skill set. He's fumbled the ball multiple times. He's slipped multiple times. Now, obviously, against Green Bay, they have something where their field was wet and then they warmed the field from under. So it was a little slippery for a lot of the 49ers players. So I'm not putting, everything that was happening last week on Jacob Cowing, but he's still in the concussion protocol right now. And then the updates, but after seeing Ricky Pearsall back there, I would wonder if Kyle Shanahan would be interested in putting Ricky back there more and maybe having Jacob Cowing out on the field on offense for maybe some like just 1 or 2 plays a game down the field passes, because he has that speed element. Even if he doesn't catch them, it can just like open up the defense a little bit and by like tricking them into thinking they have to actually cover downfield at least. I don't know. They tried it with Chris Conley last week, which I wasn't necessarily mad at that like play call, but it's kind of like, why are you going to Chris Conley right now? Why isn't that to Ricky Pearsall? Why is it, because Chris Conley couldn't really find the ball, and I don't know if that was a miscommunication with Brandon Allen and him or what. But I liked that they threw a deep pass, and I don't know if Brock hasn't been doing that because of his arm or if Kyle's not calling it. But I think calling a play like that, but with Jacob Cowing, could be interesting.
Yeah, I would like to see Cowing play. We saw in the preseason games that Cowing was effective, and especially in getting separation, in his acceleration. So, yeah, and Mr. Corey is right. The Kyle protocol, exactly. Here's my thing. You draft 2 wide receivers, one in the first round, and you don't play them.
It's maddening.
Come on.
The last time that
Yeah,
Ricky
what
Pearsall
is
actually got
this?
targets, he scored a touchdown. Like, I was kind of down on Ricky because I was just, I guess, being a hater. Like, I just didn't know how effective he would be, and who knows if he's still worth that first round pick. But when he got in the game, now I think it's 2 games ago, he scored a touchdown. He had, I think, like 68 yards or something, and only 3 or 4 targets, and literally scored a touchdown and averaged like 10 yards a carry. And that's not, like number 1 wide receiver level, but that's a good wide receiver. And I don't know why, after having a good game, now I don't know what to do about Tom. But I do think that they need to be targeting Ricky Pearsall more. The thing about Tom right now is hi Tom. Oh, hi Tom. Okay. I'm gonna oh it's okay.
I have a long conversation with my internet provider after this.
I thought this was funny. I'll get back into the injury stuff. Tom has to breathe a lot more time to be
Exactly.
equal to the 49ers penalties. What's
I'm so
happening right
sorry,
now,
guys.
Tom guy, was what it was like to watch the 49ers on offense on Sunday. It was like, it's like, get through 2 minutes without Tom freezing. Get through 2 minutes. It was like, just complete a pass, please. Oh, they completed a pass. Oh, and there's a penalty. Oh, it's called back. They did one person didn't fumble. Oh, there's a holding call. Okay. Oh, there's a false start. False start. Cool, cool. Oh, they didn't
Well,
snap the ball in time. Um. Oh, now I can't hear you, Tom. Tom. The thing is that Tom and I might go live again together later on this week, and I might finish the show by myself. I'm gonna remove him. Should I keep him on here? I'll just if he wants to rejoin, he can rejoin. I'll try to get through these injury updates. So sorry. I really appreciate everyone hanging in with us. Hi, Tom.
hi Ashley. My apologies. It's just
No worries. Well,
clearly the internet connection isn't working.
what we might do is try again tomorrow if we need to.
Okay. Okay.
But we can keep giving it a shot. It doesn't actually really bother me. I just think it's kind of funny. But if it gets to, you know,
It's distracting.
so concussion protocol. Jacob Cowing is still in there, and then Aaron Banks is in the concussion protocol, and so is Jordan Elliott. What sucks about this with the John Feliciano being, not being able to come off of IR is they have a lot of not only is their O-line suck right now, but they have a lot of injuries on O-line. Aaron Banks is in the concussion protocol, so it's not 100% that he'll be able to play. Dominic Pooney had to get an MRI on his shoulder. Also, I do feel bad because Dominic Pooney had 3 penalties on the offensive line in one half yesterday, and I don't know if that was him and the snap count kind of be like maybe it was different. Tom Brady was saying sometimes when your quarterback is different, that they like catch the ball differently from the center and it can kind of mess up the offensive line or something. My only thing is he's only committed 1 penalty before Sunday. So I don't want to hold Sunday's performance against him. Obviously, if he continues to commit penalties, that's going to be something that's unacceptable. But so far, Dominic Pooney has looked like a bright spot on the offensive line, and then he just really crumbled down in the most important game against the Packers. But now he has a shoulder injury, so he had to get an MRI for that. Deommodore Lenoir had to get an MRI on his knee. And then Renardo Green is day-to-day with a neck injury, and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles is day-to-day with a knee injury. Nick Bosa and Trent Williams will probably not be practicing this week. They're going to be day-to-day monitored. Kyle Shanahan said he hopes that they're able to play in the game. Trent Williams this week on Sunday before the game was feeling worse than he did the previous Sunday, which is why he didn't go. Nick Bosa didn't even practice. I hate to be a negative Nelly, but Nick Bosa reminds me of like an independent contractor. And I feel like if he thinks this 49er season's going down the drain, he's not going to risk hurting himself more to go play a game in Buffalo where he's going to get hurt. Maybe I'm negative. What's your take on Nick Bosa? Do you think he'll play? Do you think your internet will play? Poor Tom. I would hate this if I was Tom, so I feel bad. But I really appreciate. Feel like a lot of you guys hanging out with us are, regulars in Tom and I's show. This has never happened to us before. We have some good topics for you guys too. A bunch of which are coming from Tom's most recent article, so you guys gotta check that one out. Hi, Tom.
Hi Ashley. All right. Well, Bosa, I just think that yes, he's an independent contractor. Yes, he'll protect his career and himself. But I think that the injury is legit, that he's been overused.
Definitely.
Supposed to be last year 73% of the snaps. This year is 86. Sorensen is leaning on him too hard, and it's breaking him down.
Yeah, he's playing way more than he's used to playing. And we see why they're terrible without him. But I totally agree that the injury is legit, especially for those who are or like don't remember. He had an oblique/hip injury on one side, played through it during a game, and then hurt his other side because he was basically utilizing the other side of his body so much more because his like in pain side was hurting. So unconsciously, he was like putting a lot more pressure on the other side. So now he has 2 hip injuries, 2 oblique injuries, trying to play through those. obviously is an issue, and I don't blame him if A, he just can't play through it, or B, if he's in a situation where he could push it, but it would maybe hurt him more. You obviously I wouldn't blame Nick Bosa for making a business decision, waiting for the 49ers to play at home. Oh, hi Tom.
Yeah. Clearly, my internet connection is essentially broken. I don't want to disrupt the show any further than I already have.
No worries.
So you can fly solo, or we can do this another time. But obviously, things are bad here. I don't know exactly why, but I'm going to talk to my internet provider and find out what's going on.
Sounds great, Tom. I'm good to go at any point. We probably shouldn't do Thursday because Thanksgiving, but I'm down to go tomorrow in the
Yeah,
afternoon.
me too. Let's work it out and see. But right now, this isn't viable.
Perfect. You and I will
Sorry about
discuss.
that, Ashley. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
I'll do like a shorter mini version, and we'll go over a lot of the topics that are from your article whenever you
Okay.
and I.
Yeah, when we get a chance to actually talk.
Yeah. We could also, and we can talk about this later, but we can also do Friday if that doesn't,
Yeah,
depending on
well,
how.
one or the other. We'll figure it out.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks, Ashley.
So many
I'm so
people are.
sorry.
No
I'm so
worries.
sorry about
This is everyone's favorite show, so we're excited to do it with you again.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Take care, everybody.
I appreciate you, Tom. Thank you so much. Poor Tom. I feel bad because I know if that was me, I'd be hating myself, but I'd not hating myself, but I would just be frustrated. But Tom is the best. And let me know. I wonder if people would rather us go on Wednesday or if they'd rather us wait, which is tomorrow, till Friday, and then we can preview the game. And I know a lot of people are going to be doing stuff tomorrow and Thursday for Thanksgiving. Something that I did want to ask Tom was going to be I want to rank Thanksgiving foods. I have a controversial opinion that I think cranberry sauce is one of the top parts of Thanksgiving. I love a cranberry sauce. I'm also gluten-free, but stuffing used to be my shit. Get some turkey with gravy and stuffing, mashed potatoes, anything. I just want a vehicle for the cranberry sauce, if that makes sense. So, mashed potatoes, but put the cranberry sauce on it. Stuffing, but with cranberry sauce on it. Turkey with cranberry sauce on it. I love the cranberry sauce. And I grew up with the ghetto, canned cranberry sauce, if you know what I'm talking about. But now I can make cranberry sauce with oranges, and you squeeze the juice and lemon, and put some maple syrup and stuff in it. Oh my god, I love a cranberry sauce. I love a sauce. I'm a big like a jam, any of that. Anyways, and then I really like sweet potatoes, with marshmallows on top, delicious. And green beans. I'm not a green bean casserole girl. I don't like that, but just green beans in general, delicious. So, not trying to make you guys hungry. If Tom sees this, if he's watching or listening now, I hope that he reads the super chat. Things happen. Everyone loves Tom. Tom and I have done a show for more than a year every week now, and that's never happened to him. So I feel bad. Pumpkin pie. I'm an apple pie person. I like pumpkin. I like just eating pumpkin. I think pumpkin's fantastic. Pumpkin pie is okay. Pumpkin in your lattes. I'm a white girl in that way. Pumpkin spice lattes, delicious. But apple pie, delicious. Get pumpkin puree with blueberries and cinnamon. Or if you're making a Thanksgiving sandwich with the turkey and cranberry sauce the next day, put a little pumpkin in the sandwich. It's actually fantastic. What was I talking about besides apple pie? Got to get back to the 49ers at some point. What do you think the best choice for 49ers are? If you were GM, would you get rid of Kyle Ashley? I know I would. My dad, like I said, is listening to this, and he's very anti-Kyle. I think my issue with Kyle is I wish that there was a way that you could ask him to relinquish some power without firing him, because I think he can be a good offensive coordinator and very creative in that way. We've seen a lack of creativity from his offense this last this season, and even going back to last season, he kind of talked about when he got Christian McCaffrey feeling like the offense was on easy mode. And in some ways, I feel like that was bad for Kyle Shanahan because it feels like with the reliance of Christian McCaffrey that he kind of gave up some creativity. Right now, Jordan Mason was the number 2 running back, only behind Derrick Henry, number 2 running back in the league when Christian McCaffrey went down. And people were saying for months, like all the way back to last year, you have to think about it. Bilateral Achilles tendonitis. Tendonitis is an overuse injury. And Christian McCaffrey was, playing every single snap for multiple games last year. He had that touchdown streak he was trying to break. He was running the ball like crazy. He was being utilized in the pass game. And people kept saying, like, shouldn't you be using more of like a rotation with Christian McCaffrey, obviously being the number 1 back, but then using more of Jordan Mason, like the very few times that we had seen him, Mason and average, he was a very physical downhill runner who could really like get through tackles. And so you think like have that brutal, like you need, 2 yards, you need 5 yards, you need 3 yards, like kind of like the more brutal yards or the closing out the game yards, give those to Jordan Mason to really keep Christian McCaffrey fresh. And I remember going back to last season, people saying that being worried that Christian McCaffrey was going to burn out before the playoffs and if the 49ers were going to get to Super Bowl before the Super Bowl. And then that kind of happened. Like Christian McCaffrey was averaging 5 yards a carry in the regular season last year, and in the playoffs only averaged 3.5. Then obviously he gets injured. At the time, we didn't know how big of a deal it was, but then he spends all off season rehabbing this injury because he's Kyle Shanahan's friend, like because their families are buddies. Is this on? It is. But because their families are buddies, Kyle Shanahan gives him a massive extension when Christian McCaffrey was already the highest paid running back in the league. Which, by the way, like Christian McCaffrey is a good running back, but I think Derrick Henry is a better running back. I think right now Saquon Barkley with the Eagles is a better running back, and Christian McCaffrey is making far beyond what both those players are making. So in general, he was already the highest paid running back. He holds out for like one training camp practice. Kyle Shanahan, poops his pants and makes sure he's immediately paid. Well, the organization either I think Kyle knew that he was injured, but they either knew he was injured and continued to give him a guaranteed salary that made him the highest paid running back for the next 3 years. He's guaranteed money all the way until season 2027. So like he's under contract. He's with the 49ers. You cannot, cut him without there being a huge dead cap because that's guaranteed money. So you have Christian McCaffrey, either A, you paid him knowing he was injured, or B, you didn't know that your own player was injured. So that's malpractice too. Like that's either way, it's looks bad on the organization. But because of this bilateral Achilles tendonitis, he ends up not being able to play for the first 10 weeks of the season. And all the suspicion that like, oh, Jordan Mason is this really good running back, but like there was pushback on people that said that, right? Like people were like, okay, well, you've only seen him in a couple carries. If he had to be the one carrying it all, like that would probably go down. But it didn't. He only did better. Jordan Mason this year in against teams that fare well against the run, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry. Against teams that were poor against the run, he averaged 7 yards a carry. Over the course of all 10 games that he was the number 1 running back, he averaged 6.2 yards per carry. You can look that up right now on PFF, on NFL rankings. He was number 2 in the league for yards per carry, only behind Derrick Henry for the entirety of Christian McCaffrey being gone. The second that McCaffrey comes back, by the way, comes back from a huge injury, you would think just in a like playing it smart way that you would not want to just throw McCaffrey into playing every single snap, even if he was like just as productive as last year. You would not want to do that. You'd want to keep a rotation with him. But Kyle Shanahan instead benches Jordan Mason, who's playing incredibly. And then also, not only is Christian McCaffrey, risking further injury by going from playing no football to every single snap. Last week, he played all but 4 snaps on every offensive drive. And I know people try to say, oh, like he only carried the ball 11 times because the 49ers didn't run the ball that much against the the Packers, but he was still on the field running routes as a wide receiver or as a decoy and not getting the ball, but lining up as he was going to get the ball. So anyways, the question is about Kyle Shanahan. I think the thing that sucks is for the 49ers right now, and this is what got his dad fired, Mike Shanahan in Denver, is Kyle Shanahan is not just the coach of the 49ers. He is the GM. He has more power than John Lynch. In my opinion, I think Jed York is a really weak owner and he can kind of overpower what Jed York says. And I think that that's where Kyle is at his detriment. Kyle shouldn't be allowed to make the decision to pay a aging Christian McCaffrey who's injured. He shouldn't be allowed to make the decision to pay Brandon Ayuk when apparently the 49ers were on the phone with the Steelers getting ready to pay Brandon Ayuk and Kyle demands that he gets paid. And it's like either A, they should have paid him a lot earlier on so he could have participated in all the offseason programming, or B, what we're looking at now is that Ayuk contract looks really bad. Ayuk has an ACL and an MCL injury. He's not going to play. Best case scenario is the middle of next season. Like, get any hopes of him starting next year out of your brain. And it's probably going to be even worse than that. Like, he might not be playing until later on in next season. And also, like, just the decision making. Obviously, I love Brandon Ayuk. I'm a 49er fan, but they traded up to get Brandon Ayuk in a draft that was one of the best wide receiver drafts that the NFL has had in recent years. The 49ers did not need to trade up in that draft. They could have stayed where they were at and got T. Higgins, who I don't think is that much worse than Brandon Ayuk and is getting paid significantly less for the Bengals right now. So I think when it comes to like roster personnel decisions, think of Jalen. Is it Jalen? Not Jalen Waddle. Jalen Hurd. Like Kyle Shanahan has just consistently not made the best decisions. Not made the best decisions when it comes to personnel. Paying Javon Hargrave. I think that they went out and paid Javon Hargrave as much as they did because he had a really excellent game when they played the 49ers. So Kyle Shanahan's like view of Hargrave is like, oh, he played excellent against us. It's like, okay, well, like, why did the Eagles want to get rid of him? It's because he's actually not playing that well if you look at his entire season. You can't only take the one game that he played against you and giving this guy a long-term contract with your team. I mean, I know he's hurt right now, but Hargrave has not lived up to his deal at all. Same thing with Jake Moody. Kyle Shanahan himself made a joke when they drafted Jake Moody in the third round, which is an insane place to draft a kicker. He basically made a joke and said, haha, I never want to have to watch special teams again. And now that we drafted this guy, I won't have to for another 10 years. It's like, okay, well, that's part of being a head coach. Like, being a head coach isn't just your head and your play sheet. Like, when Ricky Pearsall got injured and instead of going to the hospital, Kyle Shanahan decided to, like, drink with the football team. Like, that's not what a head coach does. Like a head coach goes, he said it was being hosted at his house. There's no reason that his wife couldn't have, monitored the 49ers. They're all adults for an hour or two. Kyle Shanahan found out about this hours before the party. Kyle could have driven to the hospital, gone, hung out for an hour, came back, and the party would have still, just been getting started. And to me, a real head coach, like when Trey Lance like broke his leg on the football field, Kyle was just standing there, like looking at his play sheet, thinking about the next call. And that's what an offensive coordinator is for. Like, that's why the defensive line coach, Chris Kocurek, he's been asked multiple times, like, would you ever want to be defensive coordinator or something else? And he said, no, like, that's not where my passion is. I've tried it before. And when I was supposed to be thinking about, the secondary, I was sitting there still like thinking about the defensive line. And that kind of told me like where my passion is the D line. And sometimes I look at Kyle and I'm like, Kyle's passion is just the play calling. Like he just wants to figure out what the next play call is. And there's two problems with that one right now. One, his play calling has gotten stale, so he's not even doing great at that one aspect. And two, head coaching is a lot more than that. And so to get back to this question, I hear the arguments of, and Deebo Samuel just talked about this on his podcast as well, when asked, is Kyle Shanahan on this hot seat? Deebo basically said They've gone to all these NFC championship games. They've gone to the Super Bowl. Kyle shouldn't be on the hot seat. And when I hear people talk about that, I see what they're saying, or like I empathize with what they're saying, because they're basically saying like he's done fantastic. People are allowed to have one down year. Now the issue is Kyle has been a head coach for 8 years and he's had 4 down years, so he's had much more than one. And two, like I think at the end of this year, specifically if they miss the playoffs, I don't think it's like a retool. I think it needs to be a total rebuild. And I don't know if I want Kyle Shanahan to be the guy who's like in charge of the full rebuild, because kind of how we've gotten here is he hasn't had, good decision making when it comes to his offensive line philosophy. I hope I saved it. East Bay Chris wrote down a list of the quarterback injuries under Kyle Shanahan. Did I save it? Did I save it? I did. And to me, this comes down to Kyle Shanahan's coaching philosophy involves not caring about the offensive line. Like they are perfectly fine paying one guy, Trent Williams, big money, and going bargain bin shopping at the rest of the offensive line. Like his philosophy is that he can scheme around the offensive line. Well, we've seen this it's not true. Brock Purdy has gotten hurt because of this offensive line. He got his elbow hit because of this offensive line. He got his shoulder hit in that Seahawks game because of this offensive line. And Brandon Allen was taking sacks and the offensive drives were stalling because Brandon Allen doesn't have that mobility that Brock does, so he couldn't keep plays alive, and this offensive line was not holding up. And part of that is because Trent Williams was out, and obviously Trent Williams is the best player, but believe it or not, Jalen Moore, the guy who's subbing in for Trent Williams, was the highest grade offensive lineman against the Packers last year. So it wasn't just because Trent Williams was out, because that was actually a position that played best was Jalen Moore. It was Colton McKivitz. It's Jake Brendel, who everyone has been saying Jake Brendel needs to not be the center on this team. I was saying this offseason. I didn't understand why they didn't use their number 1 draft pick to draft a center. There was more than qualified centers, because centers don't always go like in the top of the draft with the rest of the most people will try to get a tackle. They'll get a right tackle or a left tackle early on after the quarterbacks go. And so I was saying, like, I think you can probably get a serviceable center where the 49ers are. If they were nervous about it, they could move up a little bit, or they could move back and take one in the second round. They didn't do either. They just stuck with Jake Brendel. And obviously, yes, the Dominic Puni signing worked out, so it's good that they got him later on in the draft. But I think they need to be a lot more aggressive in the draft or in free agency. That's what the Rams did. The Rams got 2 offensive linemen in free agency last year. I don't understand Kyle's resistance to having an offensive lineman or to drafting offensive linemen, because look at this. And Kyle consistently gets the excuse of injuries. And I think it's a big problem that he gets away. Like he gets to skirt responsibility for losing seasons when injuries happen. When I think part of the reason that injuries consistently happen to Kyle Shanahan is because of the way he structures his team. So listen to Kyle Shanahan's QB injuries. 2017, Beathard, knee injury. 2018, so year after year. 2018, Jimmy Garoppolo, ACL tear. Beathard, wrist injury. 2020, Nick Mullins, UCL tear. Jimmy Garoppolo, ankle. 2021, Trey Lance, finger. Jimmy Garoppolo, calf strain, torn thumb, and torn shoulder. 2022, Trey Lance, broken ankle. Jimmy Garoppolo, broken foot. Brock Purdy, torn UCL, so torn elbow. By the way, the only times I remember this was happening when Brock Purdy was getting surgery. The quarterback that Brock Purdy talked to about the Tommy John surgery was Nick Mullins, because that's a baseball injury, because it's your elbow. And the only other quarterback in the league who had that exact surgery was Nick Mullins, which, by the way, Nick Mullins had that injury in 2020 with Kyle Shanahan as his quarterback. That very rare injury that almost never happens to NFL quarterbacks, because it's a totally different thing. And the only way that basically can happen is when you're throwing the football. If someone yanks your arm back, which, by the way, happened to Brock Purdy again in Seattle. Greg Olson points it out on the broadcast. He goes, "Oh no, you have to be careful with your quarterback's arm getting hit like that." This was before Brock was out with his shoulder injury now. But when that happened, I literally texted my dad and I was like, "Oh my God, can you believe the announcer just said like you have to be careful with your quarterback getting hurt like or getting hit in his arm like that." Like 49er fans know that because that's how Brock tore his elbow a year ago. And that's how Nick Mullins tore his elbow in 2020. Anyways, 2022, Trey Lance ankle broken. Jimmy Garoppolo foot broken. Brock Purdy torn UCLA or torn UCL. And then luckily 2023, that was the one healthy year for the quarterbacks. Then 2024, bam, shoulder injury again. All these injuries can go back to offensive line problems. Even Jimmy Garoppolo, when he tore his ACL and he was running, the pocket was breaking down and he was running to try to get the first down. Like Kyle Shanahan's refusal to bolster his offensive line is such a hindrance. Not only does it like hurt them on a game to game basis, it makes it harder for the 49ers to, by the way, I love that my super chats are working. I'll read it in 1 second. But not only does it like inhibit the 49ers from winning on a game to game basis, but it's the main reason that Kyle Shanahan deals with QB injuries so often. And it's the main reason that a lot of his players are getting injured so often. Think about your running backs. Kyle Shanahan, the only time that he's made it to the Super Bowl is when his starting quarterback and his starting running back have been healthy in the same year for the whole year. That's the only times that he's gone to the Super Bowl. 2019 with Jimmy Garoppolo and Mostert, and then 2023 with Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy. And in order to keep those two basically the most important positions on the field, obviously having, a physical defense that can help other teams from scoring helps too. But the way to keep your offense as like such a dominant part of this football team is to keep the two most important people healthy. And the way you do that is by investing in the trenches. If you look at the Detroit Lions right now, who look like what the 49ers, look like maybe last year, but they're even younger. So you have to think that they are going to have even more chances, although they are going to move off of Ben Johnson. Not they're going to move off of, but Ben Johnson is going to get head coaching opportunities. But when you look at Detroit Lions and you look at how well Jared Goff right now, who people would not consider a top 5 quarterback, but you look at how well he's playing, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. If you look at Sam Darnold, a guy that people laughed at when he was the quarterback here, when he was the quarterback at the Jets, maybe for a good reason. I'm not a Sam Darnold believer, but when you look at his ability to be successful, the Vikings have one of the best offensive lines in the league. When you look at Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs invest so much in their defensive line and their offensive line. Teams that are successful, teams that win championships, teams that keep their most important players healthy, invest in the offensive line. It's not a sexy position. So I can understand like if that's your first round pick, maybe fans are like I wanted a wide receiver. I wanted someone cool. But it's like that matters for what, one day when you're, all hyped. And at this point, I don't even think 49ers fans would be groaning about that. I think people are begging for Kyle to actually invest in this offensive line. So they'd be excited about it. But really quickly, BNA Music, always love to see your posts on Twitter. They're hilarious sometimes. Says the problems with SF came from top picks that he's fumbled that eventually caught up to the team. McGlinchey, Thomas, Forrester, Kinlaw, and Lance. I agree. It's not only that. They've missed on all these guys, but then there's guys that they've drafted that have just been whiffs. Like if you think about their 3rd round picks, how many running backs have they ended up cutting because they drafted a guy that they shouldn't have? Like they have consistently, but you're right. These guys that their 1st round picks and they're not re-signing to your team, like you can't have that. And even if you didn't want to re-sign them because let's just say you should always be turning over your roster, these guys didn't make an impact on the team when they were here. That's how the Chiefs have been so successful. They have their couple core guys, but they're constantly turning over their roster. They're getting guys in free agency and they're hitting on their draft picks. So they always have rookie, young, hungry guys that are like really playing for them. And that's so helpful to have when you're paying, Travis Kelsey or Patrick Mahomes, or I'm blanking on the star defensive lineman of the Chiefs right now. How am I blanking on him? Oh my gosh. The defensive lineman that they're paying $1 million for. The reason that they're able to pay that much for, a few guys is because then they're getting this influx of talent from guys who are on rookie deals, and they're constantly doing that. And I think Andy Reid is so smart. Chris Jones, everyone's telling me. Thank you so much. The reason that they're able to pay a couple guys that is for a couple reasons. One, if you look at the guys that the 49ers are paying, those guys aren't producing. You look at the Chiefs, Chris Jones is, they won the Super Bowl because of that defense and because of Chris Jones. He's fantastic. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league, always gives you a chance at the end of the game, even if it's a tight game. I know they just went down to the wire with the Panthers, but if you have Patrick Mahomes at the end of the game, him and his connection with Travis Kelsey, you're going to bet on that every single time. They have won Super Bowls because those guys, the guys that are making the most amount of money, they show up. You look at the 49ers, they're the exact opposite of the Chiefs. Look at Deebo Samuel. Look at him in the Super Bowl. He's at that point, Brandon Ayuk wasn't even paid yet. He's their highest paid wide receiver. He got 12 targets in the Super Bowl, did nothing with them. Same thing, Christian McCaffrey. He was the highest paid running back in the NFL. He averaged less than 3 yards a carry in the Super Bowl. So, their highest paid players, Nick Bosa had a penalty. Trent Williams had one of his worst games was in the Super Bowl. He had 2 holding calls, I think, in the Super Bowl, Trent Williams. So, in the most important games, the players that are getting paid for the Chiefs actually show up and play. And then the guys that aren't the highest paid guys, like the rookies, they're hungry. They want that second contract. So they're showing up and playing. With the 49ers, their rookies aren't making impact because Kyle doesn't trust them enough to get on the field. And then Kyle's paying all these guys that literally aren't worth the money. No offense. Tyreek Hill is way better than any wide receiver that the 49ers have paid. And the Chiefs moved off of him. And way better. So it's upsetting that the 49ers are married to certain guys. And when I look at Kyle Shanahan, some of his decision makings, and I'll go over this more with Tom because this is something that Tom touched on in his article, but one of Kyle's downfalls is his stubbornness and his allegiance to his friends, the Cabo clique. There's no reason the Juice should be on this team. He's not impactful, and he's making what, $6 million? I think he was making $9 million, and then he took a $3 million pay cut or something. But he's still way above. I think the second highest paid fullback is making $2 million. So he's making way more than the next highest paid fullback, and he's not impactful enough. He doesn't get the ball enough. He doesn't make enough tackles. He doesn't make enough, run the ball enough. He should not be making what he's making. Deebo Samuel, the second that he freaked out at Tabor Pepper, he should have been. They should have publicly taken away his captain sign. He should have not been a captain. He should have had to go out and apologize. When Kyle Shanahan was asked about it, he should have said, he could have downplayed it. If say you don't want to blame Deebo to the media, he could have just said, it's football. They're really passionate. They care about this. We're a team that wants to win. No one should ever be hitting anyone, but they're brothers and they made up for it, and we're all laughing about it now. But instead, because Kyle has such an allegiance to his friends, he wants to be liked so badly, he went out there and said Tabor Pepper did something wrong. It's no, dude, the guy hitting someone, the captain that's hitting his peers, that's the guy in the wrong. I hate to break it to you. And I'm a huge, Deebo defender. I think this is my first year. I will say I made the same mistake. They should have moved off of Deebo this offseason. I was saying I don't want them to move off of him. I understand being infatuated, is that the right word? With the 2021 Deebo. He was so important and pivotal and made such an impact on this team, but that was 4 years ago. We can't, and Kyle Shanahan, there needs to be someone in the organization that kind of can veto Kyle. And unfortunately, he just has all the power. And I think that's what's going to be the end of him. is I think if Jed York went up to him, which I don't think Jed York would even do this because I think he has no balls, but if he did go up to Kyle Shanahan and said, like, we need to, we don't want to fire you. We appreciate everything you've done from this organization, but we think that we need to bring someone in who can help you with decision makings and stuff. I think Kyle Shanahan would walk away because he knows that he can get hired by another organization and have all the power. And Kyle doesn't seem like a guy who wants to give up power. He'd rather lose his way than win. I think him making Brandon Allen the starting quarterback over Josh Dobbs just solidifies that. John Lynch went on KMBR today, actually, and they asked him about Brandon Allen, how he played. First of all, John Lynch said that Brandon Allen played great, which I think Brandon Allen had like one good quarter where they were throwing to the outside of the field. I was, glad that Brandon Allen could do that, but Brandon Allen also slipped like 5 times. He literally fumbled the football and might be because his non-throwing hand, he had a splint on his finger. His finger was broken and had a broken hand. And so anytime he couldn't throw the ball with his hand immediately because the offensive line was breaking down, he had to hold on to the football. He'd freaking drop the football. He did that twice, turned the ball over once. So that's 3 turnovers in, one game. I don't think you can say that guy did great, even if he had a couple good throws. Like, I'm happy he had a couple good throws, but that's not a good game. I hate to break it to you. And Josh Dobbs is the other quarterback that the 49ers have on the team. And in my opinion, he should have been the guy to start because he actually has a skill set that's more like Brock Purdy's. He has not that strong of an arm. No offense, Brock Purdy doesn't have that strong of an arm. And also he can utilize his legs. So when the pocket is breaking down, he could have ran for a first down. He could have, bought a little bit of time by running to the edges and then throwing the ball. That's something Brock Purdy has done consistently this year. And the O-line was a huge problem in this game. And it looked worse in this game. And I think it looked worse because they didn't have Brock Purdy in the game. And unlike Brock Purdy, Brandon Allen doesn't run. So anytime the pocket was breaking down, he was taking a sack or running for negative yardage or just throwing the ball away, which, yeah, every once in a while, I've definitely said this before, like Brock Purdy, you need to be able to throw the ball away. You need to be able to take a sack. You need to be able to dump it off. But that's like occasionally. For the most part, Brock Purdy's legs have been a great asset for him. And in this offseason, before the season started, Kyle Shanahan decided that Brandon Allen could run his system better. And even though Josh Dobbs, by the way, also Brandon Allen hadn't started a game in 3 seasons. So last season, Josh Dobbs won 4 games with the Vikings. He won 2, lost 1, won 2. I think he also won a game. Was it with the Cardinals? So anyways, Josh Dobbs won multiple games literally a year ago. So he's played more recently. He has legs, so he could have helped with the offensive line breaking down, not being as big of a deal. And Kyle Shanahan decided to not play that guy who literally won games last year in favor of playing a guy who hasn't played in 3 seasons, who has a weak arm, who can't move in the pocket, all because he knows his system better. Like, to me, that's poor decision making on Kyle Shanahan. And there should be someone in the organization that's allowed to like veto Kyle. Like, even the Rams this last season, Sean McVay, he calls offensive play calls, but they hired a guy that's supposed to help on like 3rd downs, 4th downs, decision making downs. There's like another guy in the booth that helps Sean McVay with that. And then they also have a guy that helps with their GM. So they hired 2 guys just to be assistants to Sean McVay. They can basically help Sean McVay or veto Sean McVay in important moments. He's someone who doesn't have such a big ego that he's not willing to accept help. Kyle Shanahan is the opposite. Kyle Shanahan would rather lose than accept advice from other guys. He would like his 4th down decision makings. He says he goes off of feel. They don't make any sense at all. He doesn't go by analytics. He doesn't go by the old school way. He doesn't go for it every time. He doesn't kick it every time. He doesn't punt it. Like, it's just on a whim how Kyle feels. There has to be a more effective strategy. And I know there is because all the other teams in the NFL do it. Even the Harbaugh coaches, who people often say Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh are very like old school coaches. They're defense first, they're run game, physical guy, very similar to Kyle in that way. They go by analytics when it comes to 4th down decision makings. Like, I think that a coach when Kyle Shanahan didn't know the rules to the overtime, and I know some people try to say he knew the rules, he knew the rules. Kyle Shanahan did not know the rules. The players came out, they said they didn't know the rules. Kyle came out, and the first thing out of his mouth when he was asked why he decided to keep the ball for the offense first, someone gave him the excuse right after the Super Bowl. They said, "Oh, was it because your defense was tired?" And he said no. And then he said, "Oh, it's because we wanted to be able to not give Patrick Mahomes the ball back." So then the person interviewing him was like, "No, no, no, there's multiple Patrick Mahomes would have gotten the ball back." And then he said, "Oh, no, 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 it's because we wanted the ball third." Well, then Andy Reid said they would have never got the ball third. We would have gone for two, obviously. If the Chiefs would have scored a touchdown and they had the ball second, you have the opportunity instead of giving the ball back to the 49ers to just go for two and either win it or lose it right there. And Andy Reid said that they would have done that. There should be someone on the 49ers staff that goes, "Hey, Kyle, we know that you might kick it away, but our job is to get into the heads of what the other team is going to do. We need to try to be able to accurately predict what the other team is going to do so we can strategize against that." There should be a guy who can tell Kyle, "This is what you're doing." So, anyways, I get frustrated with Kyle because I do think he has the ability to be a good offensive coordinator, but I don't think he's ever going to relinquish any power. And I think if the 49ers miss the playoffs this year, that they can't just retool. I think like a lot of these guys got to go. And then if a lot of guys, say 10 guys leave, let's say they move off of Juice, they move off of Debo, they move off of most of the defensive linemen, they move off of offensive linemen, they move off of all the backup tight ends. I mean, that's a lot of players that I want to be replaced in free agency and in the draft. And do you trust Kyle to be the guy to choose those? I also think that they should probably draft a quarterback next year. I'm not saying they have to draft him super highly, but I think when it comes to giving Brock Purdy like a 5 to 10-year deal, I would be really hesitant about that because his arm, like they genuinely don't know what's wrong with his arm right now. Something that's really frustrating. I read you guys, I know it was very chaotic because Tom was cutting in and out, but I read you guys that injury report yesterday that came from the call with Kyle Shanahan. Someone did try to ask, like, what is the nature of Brock Purdy's shoulder injury? Because we want to know, is it an ACL joint sprain? Jordan Mason suffered that in his shoulder. Is it a tear? Is it a strain? Is it like what is wrong with his shoulder? They're saying that it's nothing bone wise, it's nothing huge, but obviously something, a minor tear or something, maybe it's a bone bruise. Something's going wrong in his shoulder right now. And I wish we knew what that was because it does scare me. That's his throwing arm. He's already had elbow surgery on his throwing arm. He already didn't have that strong of an arm to begin with. And I think Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. I'm not trying to shit on him. But if you're already a weaker armed quarterback, and then in 3 years, you've had 2 of those years you've had to miss games because of either an elbow or something going on with your arm, I'm hesitant to give that guy 65 million for 5 years, because what happens if next year his arm hurts too? What if he starts getting, remember with Trey Lance, everyone talked about like arm fatigue? What if that's something that Brock Purdy has to deal with? We don't know, because last year he basically rushed back from that elbow injury. People are saying that it could take up to a year. He was back in training camp. If you remember, Brock Purdy was back early, and a lot of people thought he was going to start off really slow, and he started off kind of swinging. But then in the Super Bowl, people asked him like, "How were you able to bounce back so well?" Blah blah blah, and he was honest, and he was like, "Oh, I was playing through pain all the way until like Thanksgiving, so last year's Thanksgiving," which means he played multiple months through pain in his elbow, arm, shoulder area. I'm nervous, like, if this guy has to be rehabbing his throwing arm every year that he's in the NFL, I don't know if that's a good guy or if that's a guy that you want to 100% pay. I'm not saying, you can't pay that guy, but we're about to go face not we, but the 49ers are about to go face the Bills. And when you watch, guys like Josh Allen play, 2 weeks ago we saw Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert go at it. When you see these quarterbacks that can constantly throw down the field, they can utilize their legs. Like it does, for me, make me think like, I don't think the 49ers should just stop drafting quarterbacks. I think you should continue to look at quarterbacks. And I'm not saying that you have to let go of Purdy, but you shouldn't close yourself off to the opportunity that you could find another quarterback potentially. Mustafa says, let her cook. I really appreciate you guys for the super chats. I'm also furious with myself because I've gotten so many super chats today, and this whole entire season, I thought my super chats were on, and it turned out they were off. But I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Anyways, did I even answer the original question? I guess where I'm coming from is I can understand the people that say Kyle Shanahan has had, this is one bad year. He should have one more year. If next year is bad, you should move off of him 100%, but you should give him one more opportunity. Because I can see, let's see, Christian McCaffrey gets healthy and maybe Kyle Shanahan starts to utilize his brain and they keep Jordan Mason and they use more of a rotation with Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. Isaac Rendo comes in. They have that running back crew. They start getting Ricky Pearsall more involved. The times that they have gotten involved, he's actually looked really good. They move off of Deebo Samuel. They move off of Juszczyk. They add some wide receiving talent. Eventually, Brandon Ayuk returns. If those guys are healthy, they add to the offensive line. If the offense is healthy and they can get some physicality and speed on defense, stop missing so many tackles on defense, I could see them having a good year next year. So, part of me thinks, okay, injuries have been really bad. Give Kyle Shanahan one more opportunity. But then, I just think that that's not realistic. I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going to learn or want to change or be open to adding. Like I said, I think I would only keep Kyle Shanahan if you could guarantee that Jed York was going to have some cojones and say, Kyle, we don't want to fire you, but we need, this team is undisciplined. They had 12 penalties. They're a veteran team, and they had 12 penalties against the Packers, and they've struggled with penalties this entire year. They struggled with penalties last year in the postseason, in the Super Bowl. They struggled with penalties. They constantly, when they are losing, they lose in embarrassing fashion where they look like amateurs. They look like a UCL, a not, or what is it? USFL, the organization that the Rock owns, the football team or the football organization that happens during spring. I think the 49ers right now, Deebo just has had his podcast. He said Kyle Shanahan shouldn't be to blame. He said that they're still a good team. Going into last game, Fred Warner on his podcast said that they're an outstanding team. They just need to finish. Well, you're not an outstanding XFL is what I was trying to talk about. Thank you. But you're not an outstanding team, Fred Warner, if you can't finish. Those are oxymorons. They can't be used together. You can't say, we're an outstanding football team. We just need to learn how to finish. You can't, what? Then you're not a good team. That's the most important part. Scoring touchdowns is the most important part. It doesn't matter. I think they're top 3 in yards up until the red zone. That's great. I love that you can walk down the field. But if you suck, if you're 31st, I think right now they're 27th in red zone. If you're one of the 5th worst red zone offenses, guess what? You're not a good offense. That's the most important part. Scoring touchdowns, actually getting in the end zone. That's how you win games. That's how you get to call yourself a good offense. That's how you get to call yourself a good team. Fred Warner, this is not a good defense. You had 15 missed tackles. 15 missed tackles. 15 missed tackles in one game is insane. They had 15 missed tackles in the first half. Josh Jacobs himself broke 10 tackles in the first quarter. Not even the first half. The first quarter. He broke 10 tackles. You're not a good football team. And to me, you have to let go of tons of players because these are people, Kyle Shanahan's messaging is falling on flat ears. These players are giving up or just not executing. In a different podcast that he did with his wife, Fred Warner said that Jair Brown jokes about staying up and playing video games the night before games. the NFL football games. The reason he said this, he only let this be known, it was after the Dallas game and they won that game. And apparently Jair Brown like had a lot of energy. And so Fred Warner went up to him and was like, oh, like, did you, what am I saying? Sorry, I read this chat said what happened to Marcos. Marco and I have been missing each other. He had some stuff happen with work, with all the floods and the hurricanes going on with Florida, and then I had some stuff. But Marco and I will probably go live. Well, I don't know. Usually we go live on Thursday, but it's going to be Thanksgiving. But we'll go live at some point this week. We talk all the time. Love Marco. Clutch Gene Sports. We're still gonna be streaming together. We tried to stream together last week, but I was sick. Oh, that's what I was saying about Jair Brown. Like, Jair Brown has to freaking go. He's playing video games and not sleeping. And Fred Warner, who's supposed to be a captain, apparently knows this. And instead of being like, dude, what the fuck? Like, this is unacceptable. He just like made a joke out of it on his podcast. Debo Samuel went on his podcast just now and like up until 2 weeks ago was saying 49ers are the best team in the NFL. Like, they have an accountability problem. They do not accept where they are. They are delusional. And in previous years, maybe that delusion has helped them get through losing streaks and it's helped them into the playoffs. But like, they're worn down. They are questioning each other. Like, I think the moment that I saw that Kyle Shanahan was losing the locker room was George Kittle. Anytime any media member had ever criticized Kyle Shanahan before the Super Bowl, George Kittle was one of the first guys to go to the podium and be like, we need to play better as players. You guys don't understand how good Kyle Shanahan is. This is our coach. Like, we believe in him. He would stand 10 toes down for Kyle Shanahan. He would talk about how they were going to get back to the Super Bowl, how much he believed in this team. After they lost that Super Bowl, media members, and they've done this multiple times since that Super Bowl loss, have prompted George Kittle to say that they're going to go back to the Super Bowl, have prompted George Kittle to say like how much he believes in Kyle Shanahan. And George Kittle refuses to say that. George Kittle will say, we know how tough it is. We know how difficult it is to get there. When I was a lot younger, I thought, oh, this is just how it is. Every year we're going to be in the mix. We're going to be coming back. And now that they've lost a second Super Bowl, I think it's taken a mental toll on them. Look at the pictures of when Kyle Shanahan got hired to where he's at now. He's aged like presidents do. He's aged like 25 years in 7 years. So I just think, I don't know. I think potentially if Jed York really doesn't want to move off of him, if I'm Jed York, I'm 100% at least taking interviews. I want to know, Ben Johnson, would you be open to coming to the 49ers? Would you want to coach Brock Purdy? Would you want to coach this team? What are your ideas for this team? What would you want to get paid wise? All that. I would want to interview Ben Johnson because he's going to have lots of options. So it's possible that the 49ers would want to hire Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson would rather go to the Bengals. If Zach Taylor gets fired, maybe he'd rather go be Joe Burrow's coach. But I'm at least doing those interviews. I'm asking Bill Belichick, you want to talk about an undisciplined, unprepared team, a team where the rookies are, or younger guys are staying up playing video games before games. Special teams are making errors, fumbling kick returns, holding on punt returns, like all the ridiculous, maddening errors that the 49ers are making. Those are the areas that Bill Belichick excelled in. There was never a situation that a Bill Belichick team was not prepared for. It was all the little things that Bill Belichick, like his strictness. I feel like this team needs that. They're too emboldened. They think too highly of themselves right now. I think Andy Reid needs a medal for the way that he has been able to have that Chiefs team that are literally winning Super Bowl year after year after year. They stay humble. They stay hardworking. They don't feel like this, fat and happy team. They feel like a team that's still hungry, that still has something to prove. I have no idea how he's been able to keep that kind of will in them, except for the fact that they're constantly kind of turning over their roster. There's very few guys that won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs the first time that are still there. And I think that that's kind of for a reason. Like Andy Reid offensive genius, that's Andy Reid. He's constantly like, Kyle Shanahan has this one system that his dad ran, and the whole league kind of runs that now. So it no longer surprises defenses. Andy Reid is the opposite. He was throwing downfield to Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill. Defenses adjusted. Then he got rid of Tyreek Hill, and he was just having Patrick Mahomes do the 5-yard, 10-yard passes, and their team was winning based on yak yards. Then teams adjusted to that. Now they have downfield threats again. He's every single year when defenses adjust to the way that the Chiefs are calling offense, he'll change it up and he'll recycle player or he'll get rid of players so that he can adjust his offense each year. Anyways, I think that Kyle Shanahan is really missing. Maybe it's Mike not having Mike McDaniel, the offensive, play calling that was happening there. I think Kyle himself said that having Christian McCaffrey makes offense on easy mode. Well, now it's no longer working, but he's still calling plays the same. It's like he lost his motivation to work hard and to be creative and to call something like it's harder to scheme up Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerrero and get two running backs on the field the way that, once again, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs on the Lions, they're constantly sharing the workload, even though both of them could be, if one of them was on the 49ers team, they would take all the carries. But Ben Johnson staying creative keeps them both involved because they both have different skill sets that they excel in. And I wish that Kyle Shanahan had the will to want to be creative on offense like that, because he has players on his teams that he could do it with, but instead he just thinks it's easier just to hand the ball to Christian McCaffrey. Well, right now, Jordan Mason is averaging, do I have this written down? I do. Jordan Mason is averaging, let me see, where's it written down? I do have to pee, so I'm going to go soon. Yeah. So Jordan Mason averaging this year 6 yards a carry. Isaac Guerrero this year averaging 6 yards a carry. Obviously, Guerrero has gotten a lot less touches than Jordan Mason and Chris McCaffrey for that matter. But both of them are averaging 6 yards a carry on the year. This is per PFF. Chris McCaffrey's averaged less than 3 yards a carry in the last 2 games that he's played. Now, some of that is on the offensive line, but once again, offensive line issues, in my opinion, that goes back to Kyle Shanahan and his philosophy of not investing in the offensive line, and Jed York not telling Kyle Shanahan that there needs to be someone in this organization that has veto power above him. No offense, I think John Lynch is good as like a public speaker type of guy. I think that's why he brought him in, because Kyle Shanahan doesn't really like talking with the media and stuff. But when it comes to personnel decisions, John Lynch does not have first say. John Lynch answers to Kyle Shanahan. And to me, in order for this organization to run right, there needs to be someone in the organization that can check Kyle. And I don't think Jed York has the cojones to do that. And so, unfortunately, I think the only way to, add that element is by getting rid of Kyle Shanahan altogether. Because Kyle Shanahan himself isn't going to give up power. And I don't think Jed York is going to insist on it. So I think they're just going to hold on to Kyle until he totally burns out. Or like burns his rope, and either he leaves because he knows that this organization is doomed because he's given all these old and injured players guaranteed salary, so maybe he'll want to leave, or B, he ends up getting fired. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. I just don't think that Jed York is the type of guy to do that, to be honest. But the upcoming topics that I have that I was going to go over with Tom, because he wrote some great articles about it. For you guys who, are just joining me now and didn't hear earlier, Tom, who's never had internet problems before, and I've streamed with him every week, his internet was really struggling, so we're going to go later on this week. But I put, these were the topics that we're going to get over. We were going to go over, so you can look forward to them when I go live with Tom later this week. Critical decisions that are going to be needed for this offseason. So that's coaching, Brian Schneider, obviously going to be fired. But what about Nick Sorensen? Should Nick Sorensen be fired? Should they be looking to get Robert Saleh back? Or should they be trying to go in a totally different direction defensive wise? Maybe they shouldn't move off Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen has a lot less defensive talent than they did with Steve Wilkes, but he's also 25th defense in the league. That's the worst ranked defense that they've ever had with a defensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan. So I don't know how you keep him when you've fired Steve Wilkes, who had, a defense that was only giving up 17 points per game. So what do you do there? What do you do with GM? Should they maybe Jed York will keep Kyle Shanahan, but try to get a new GM? Maybe Jed York will move off of Kyle. Maybe Kyle will want to leave. So critical decisions that will be needed. Also, something to realize: not only hopefully will injuries be less important, or injuries be better next year, but they're also going to be going against, I think, the AFC or NFC South, which are like a lot weaker teams. So their schedule is going to be a lot easier next year. One, they had a hard schedule because they went all the way to Super Bowl this year, but two, just they played a hard division this year. So that will be something. And then talked about the amateur mistakes, total team collapse. I want with Tom, I want to address I've heard this in my comments a lot, they've got talent, they can't throw it away, those types of conversations. I found it interesting that Emmanuel Acho, he went after Kyle Shanahan. Colin Cowherd, he went after Kyle Shanahan. Richard Sherman went after this defense and the defensive coordinator. So a lot of people in the mainstream media are, being a lot more critical of this 49ers team than we've ever seen them before. And then I put what's most to blame: injuries, player execution, Kyle Shanahan, or Brock Purdy. So those are all things that I'm going to be going over with Kyle. I mean, not with Kyle. I'm going to have Kyle Shanahan on with Tom. I don't know if I talked about Lynch on KNBR a little bit. He said that they were embarrassed and that's not who they are. I'm going to take a breath. John Lynch went on KNBR this morning, and he said that they got embarrassed against the Packers game and that's not who they are. I agree that they got embarrassed. I disagree. I think this is who the 49ers are. And if you remember last week, there was a soundbite of Kyle Shanahan in a press conference. He said that the 49ers were disappointed in themselves and they were pissed off at their performance. And it's like, okay, well, that was before the Packers game. And then they went up and put that performance against the Packers. So that didn't look like a team that was, pissed off and ready to change the narrative. That looked like a team that didn't give a fuck and didn't have their shit together. And that one, I mean, it is player execution for them to be that undisciplined, but to me, that goes to the head coach. If you're not coaching it, you're allowing it. That saying, to me, Kyle Shanahan, there's no way that you can have back-to-back 12 men on the field, penalty. Oh, right after that, as you're on the field yelling, you get another 12 men on the field penalty. Ridiculous. So that is who they are. I disagree with John Lynch on that. He said that they didn't tackle. I agree, they didn't tackle. They had 15 missed tackles in one game, like I said, or in one half, 20 in the whole game. They didn't show up. This is all comments from John Lynch. He said they didn't show up. I agree. They did not show up. They looked absent out there. And freaking the Packers were trying to give the game away. That's what's shitty is, like, most people thought Tom and I last week, we said that they were going to lose that game. I thought they were going to lose that game because I thought the Packers were just far and away going to be better and the 49ers are injured and they just wouldn't be able to keep up. The 49ers, if they would have just not bit themselves in the ass, could have won that game. Jordan Love was dying to throw an interception, and they were like letting the 49ers hang around up until the very end. I know the defense ended up giving up 38 points or something, but it was like all the way up until the end of the third quarter that the 49ers, if the offense would have scored more than 10 points, they could have easily stolen that game out of the Packers' pockets. So John Lynch said they didn't show up. They had careless penalties. He said that on defense, there needs to be more guys swarming to the football and to the running back. I agree with that. Right now, you're seeing so many missed tackles. You're seeing one guy make a tackle, or not make a tackle, but like attempt a tackle. He misses. And then there's usually like 3 or 4 guys that are supposed to be there. Under D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh, they called it swarming to the football, where basically like 4 guys all attack at the same time. So if one of them misses, or if like say Fred Warner's making a tackle and a running back's right here, maybe the running back will try to move to miss Fred Warner. But then because everyone's swarming, there's going to be 3 other guys around there. They're going to tackle him when he tries to move out of the way. Well, right now, you basically just have one guy. Like, people are not swarming. There's like one guy making a tackle and missing. And then the guy gets like 5 yards before the next guy even attempts to tackle him. So, like I said, John Lynch said that they need more guys swarming to the football and the running back. When asked about Christian McCaffrey, Lynch said that because the radio host basically said, oh, he, looks like he's kind of missing a step. Is he, still ramping up? Is he not in football shape yet? Basically trying to be like, why the fuck is Christian McCaffrey getting, 22 touches a game when Jordan Mason was leading the league, or, second to Derrick Henry, leading the league in, in yards per carry. Sorry. When Christian McCaffrey can't move the football. And John Lynch was very defensive about this. He said Christian McCaffrey is not ramping up, and that when he does his eye test, that he sees nothing wrong with where Christian McCaffrey's at right now. That scares me. And once again, I go to call Kyle out on his bullshit, because to me, John Lynch just lets Kyle get away with whatever. John Lynch knows that Kyle wants Christian McCaffrey to be in the game all the time. So John Lynch is going to go on there and act like he's blind and say that there's nope, Christian McCaffrey hasn't lost a step. He looks just the same. Don't mind that he's only averaging less than 3 yards per carry. Don't look at that. Don't look at that. No, he looks great. So yeah, he said that he didn't really get the opportunity. Christian McCaffrey didn't really get the opportunity, even though Christian McCaffrey is the only running back that got the opportunity. That it was more on the offensive line. I will agree the offensive line fucking sucked, and that was partially why Christian McCaffrey played so bad. But then I go, John Lynch, you're spewing bullshit, because on KNBR last week, he said that the offensive line was playing the best that they've ever played. So what is it, Lynch? You either have to admit that Christian McCaffrey has lost a step, and so he's playing bad and the offensive line is great, or B, you can say that the offensive line is having a down game. You can't say both. You can't say the offensive line last week was playing the best that they've ever played, and then this week is all of a sudden the worst offensive line ever, and you can't blame Christian McCaffrey because it's the offensive line. Which, by the way, I do think it's both. I think Christian McCaffrey has lost a step, and I'm not saying he's never going to get back. I just think he's coming off an injury right now. And I think the offensive line is also bad. But for some reason, John Lynch likes to change the story with that. But yeah, he said his eyes tell him that Christian McCaffrey looks good and there's no reason to change it up. Okay, well, then you need to be fired. If you're really an evaluator, if you're the evaluator, you're the number one evaluator for the 49ers, which we know isn't true. We know it's actually Kyle Shanahan, but John Lynch is supposed to be. And he is lying to people's faces, saying that, Christian McCaffrey is just as effective as he was last year. That's just not true. So when asked about Deebo Samuel, John Lynch said people have high expectations for Deebo. No shit, Deebo makes $26 million a year. They should have high expectations for him. But he said people have high expectations for Deebo, and then he referenced his kick return and said that that's the Deebo they need more of. Okay, well, Deebo Samuel isn't a kick returner. Deebo Samuel is a wide receiver and a running back half the time. Every time he's run the ball in recent weeks, he's averaged -1 yards. He goes backwards when they try to have him run the ball. When he's a wide receiver, he misses the pass that's straight in his hands and on his chest, bumps it up for an interception. He doesn't get any yards after the carry. Deebo has always struggled as a route runner. He's always struggled with speed before the ball's got in his hands. But his thing was always that once he got the ball in his hands, he could just blast off. He's like one of the worst wide receivers in the league at yards after the catch. That was the thing that Deebo was good at. So Deebo sucks as a wide receiver right now. So John Lynch is telling us that we should be happy that Deebo had a good kick return? You're paying him $26 million to be a kick returner? Ricky Pearsall was on kick return like 2 weeks ago and did just as good. He made like a 75-yard kick return. I understand that the kick return getting called back wasn't on Deebo. But another thing with kick returns is you have like 1 or 3 to 5 steps before the defenders can actually hit you. Well, when Deebo's on top speed, defenders don't want to hit Deebo Samuel because when he's hit top speed, he can hit hard. Unfortunately, when you're a wide receiver and it's you versus a quarterback on you, they're going to run right away, and Deebo can't get away from him. And he doesn't have that short yardage, quick speed anymore. That's a problem. Deebo Samuel is regressed, and he's regressed for multiple years in a row now. This isn't like him. Like, I think Christian McCaffrey might be able to bounce back. I think Deebo Samuel is. You're never seeing 21 Deebo Samuel again, unfortunately. And that was my favorite player on this team, so I'm not trying to be an asshole. So, anyways, he said, yeah, I thought that was ridiculous from John Lynch. And then a different thing I want to talk about with Tom is the difference between Brock Purdy and Mahomes bigger than the difference between Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid? I think that could be an interesting question. And then, does this team need a total rebuild or just more of a reboot if the 49ers miss the playoffs? So those are some of the topics that you can look forward to me talking to with Tom today. I really appreciate everyone who tuned in. I know the beginning, 20 minutes of this, me trying to get through the injuries with Tom coming in and out, was probably very distracting to watch. So I really appreciate you. Definitely check out Tom's articles. A lot of the topics that we're going to go over, he's already written about on Twitter. His handle is NinerCast. Send him love, because I know this is your guys' favorite show, the one that I do with Tom. And I know he's definitely pissed off that his internet wasn't working. So make sure to give me a like and a subscribe, because I will definitely be back with him. And for all y'all who hung out with me for an hour and a half, oh my gosh, I can't believe how long I talked. I'm so sorry. But for all you guys that hung out with me through that, I really, really appreciate you. All the super chats, really appreciate you. I see Ramelia Sports. He got in here at the very end. I bet you're having a victory lap with how the Rams are doing. Ramelia Sports. I'd actually, if you want to, I don't know if you'd be up for it, but I'd love to talk sometime, because the Rams kind of went through this, except for the Rams actually freaking won the Super Bowl. But I don't know if you heard me. I was talking about Sean McVay, how he actually accepted some help on offense. He has some guys that help him with the critical decision makings on third down and personnel decisions and stuff like that. I know that happened this offseason. And obviously the Rams had a down year, and then they've been able to ramp it back up. Now, the thing with the Rams is they actually won the Super Bowl. The 49ers won the Super Bowl last year. This year would hurt a lot less. The thing that sucks about this year, and one of the reasons I think Kyle Shanahan has to go, is he had the all-star team, and now the team has missed its window. And if they do win a Super Bowl again, I think it's gonna have to be with a whole new, roster, a whole new core. I think Super Bowl window with this last core is shut. So, but anyways, I'd love to talk to you guys all. Make sure to like and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys hanging in with me, and for all the super chats and just all that. Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna let you guys go now, but thank you. And like I said, leave me a comment. Let me know in the comments after I end this. It helps with the stream. If you leave me a comment, do you blame Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, player execution, or injuries on why this season has gone down the drain? I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe. I'll make sure to do a makeup stream with Tom this week. Thank you.